Ooh, we're doing brownies. Story time about almost getting jumped because of my friend. With friends like this, you don't need enemies. Do you know that one friend who just always gets off scot-free? This has happened 2 times as well with this friend. We're almost getting beat up while he's sprinting off. This story, by the way, happened not long after Christmas, so it does often come to my mind this time of year. So it was New Year 2006. What a way to start the new year. So me and some friends had planned to go and watch Get Rich or Die Trying. There were quite a lot of us going to watch this film together. From what I remember, there was about 12 in total. And back then I had a lot of guy friends, so there was just me and one other girl. As some of us lived in different parts of the cities, we all agreed to meet up in Piccadilly Gardens, the usual spot for teens and other reprobates. This was a normal outing for us though, like we went to the cinema most weekends. Some of us even went to the cinema and watched like multiple films back to back. We didn't even wait for films that we wanted to really see. We'd literally just go and watch anything. This day was different though. So after we all met up in the gardens, we made our way down to the AMC cinema on Deansgate. We actually arrived a bit early, so we bought our tickets and then we made our way to the seating area outside our screen. There were quite a few of us. Some of us was sat on the floor sharing earphones, gossiping, that kind of stuff. I remember me and my friend Frank was sat on the floor listening to my iPod that I'd just got for Christmas, and our friend Smooth was like standing in front of us just talking. After a while, people started making their way out of the screen, and I remember being still sat on the floor whilst I'm watching people leave the screen. As I'm people watching, being my usual observant self, I noticed my friend Natalie throwing sweets from his pick and mix at people that were leaving the screen that we were waiting to go in. And I remember saying, "Natalie, don't do that, man." And he just looked at me and continued to throw his sweets at people. It was now finally time to start making our way into the screen. And I noticed that a few people that were leaving the screen were now coming back in as though they were going to watch the film a second time. But it weren't really unusual to me because we did stuff like that. Like I said, we were filmies, we were always at the cinema, and it weren't really that unusual for people to do something like that. Especially with Get Rich or Die Trying, it was like a really highly anticipated film at the time. I don't think the film had even started yet when these 3 guys approached us and this altercation started to break out. I'm sat in my seat looking up at these guys who were calling me and my other girlfriend slags. Because there's only 2 of us and we're like with a large group of guys. And I'm just kind of trying to make sense of what's going on when I realise, oh, these guys are pissed at Natalie for throwing sweets at them. And instead of him just apologising, he started antagonising them and making things worse. Luckily, most of the other guys that we were with were a lot less problematic and diffused the situation quite fast. And then we got to watching the film. After this though, I remember being quite on edge because those guys never left. It turned out they didn't want a second showing of 50. They wanted their lick back, and rightfully so. I sat through that whole movie watching their every move. I knew that it wasn't over, and I think Natalie knew that too. Right, for those who don't know the AMC cinema on Deansgate, there's a few ways in and a few ways out. So usually we would enter the cinema one way and exit another way, depending on what screen we were in. So on this particular day we did the same. We left out a different door to which we initially came in. Right, upon hitting the exit, I look up and there's like 20 guys standing there. I look over to see Natalie's reaction and there's already a ball of smoke. He was already on his way back in the cinema to find another exit. Some of us followed him back into the cinema and some of us left passing that 20-man deep crew. I was one of them that left passing that 20-man deep crew because I hadn't done anything wrong. I can't even think of my words. I'm just going to take 5. Okay, sorry if my focus now looks a little bit different. I went for a break, my camera went off and the lens closed and changed position. When we approached the corner to see if the others had gone to another exit, we see another gang of guys. They had us surrounded. As we're eyeing up the situation, we see 2 of our friends come bounding out the exit and head straight for us. Since it wasn't any of us that had antagonised the guys in the first place and Natalie was now nowhere to be seen, we all just started heading back to the gardens. But these guys had started to follow us. So we're heading down Deansgate and we're talking about where our friends might have gone, which routes they might have took. When we hit the corner and see 4 of our friends being chased into a McDonald's. I don't specifically remember who I was walking with or who I saw being chased, but none of them were Natalie. So we're like, okay, let's head into the McDonald's and watch our mates get beat up. No, seriously, we were going to try and regroup everyone from there. So it was in McDonald's when our phone started blowing up. The guys that were chasing our friends must have dipped because it got too public. But one of my friends got intel that some of the guys had caught up with my friend Frank and 2 others and they'd beat them up and robbed them. And we were like, what about Natalie? He said, oh, I don't think he was there. Of course he wasn't. As we're talking and still trying to figure out where everyone is, my mum starts calling me. I answer it and she's like, love, what's happened? Natalie's here. Natalie's here? Wait, what? So I tell her I'm going to be home soon, but she insists on coming to where I am with Natalie. Good. Because why are people out here getting ran down, robbed and beaten up for you? I tell her where I am and hang up the phone. As soon as I hang up, I get another call from Frank, who's frantically telling me that I got beat up, my iPod got robbed, because he still had my iPod from earlier when we were both jamming to tunes before the film. He said that it was him, Smooth, and another friend that got cornered, beat up, and robbed of their phones and my iPod. Obviously, I told him not to worry about the iPod and to make sure that he's safe. That was the first priority. He said that he was okay and that him and the others were going to make their way on from there. We come out of McDonald's to some of our friends coming out of the casino facing it. Now, obviously, we were all underage. So we're like, what are you doing coming out the casino? And they were like, oh, we ran in there for cover when the guys were chasing us. The bouncers just let them run in. At this point now, my mum's pulling up with Natalie's sheepish ass in the car. A few of my friends jump in and she starts to drive them home. Natalie's not saying anything in the car from what I remember. He's really quiet. We drop the other two friends off first and then we head to Natalie's. When we get to Natalie's house, I don't necessarily remember what the parents were saying, but I do remember him being really apologetic and offering to give me his iPod. I refused his iPod, but I accepted the apology. Part of me didn't want his iPod as well because his was like the OG iPod, which is actually really cool, but mine was like the new Nano that came out at the time. So yeah, I didn't really want, you know, the old shoddy iPod. But we were kids, we were friends, I still had a lot to learn. Okay, stay with me, we're almost at the end of the story. Okay, so fast forward a couple of years where now I'm at college and I meet these two crazy guys. Let's call them Devil and Hector. I actually have some crazy stories about them. If you want to hear them, let me know. Also, it is worth noting, to be honest, that Devil was not a friend from college, he was a friend of Hector's. So it's now 2008 and I'm out having some day drinks with some college friends, two of them being Devil and Hector. I feel like Devil and some others had gone to the shop or something because it was just me and Hector at this point. We're chopping it up, having a laugh. I don't know how we got into the subject, but it was relevant to tell him about the night at the cinema with Natalie. His response was interesting though, and I feel like we both knew I was onto it. He was like, oh no, it's really bad that.
Boo!
Like, he may as well have whistled afterwards and faced the traffic. About a month or so later, I was out with the same group of college friends. We were having a good time. We were playing drinking games. Some of us ended up wanting to go to the strip club and some of us wanted to stay behind. This night got super weird, by the way, but this is another story time. By the way, some of the college guys had rented an apartment in Deansgate and that's where we were all hanging out playing the drinking games and stuff. Later on in the night, Hector and I are standing in the kitchen making some important life decisions. When he goes, I need to tell you something, I feel really bad about it. I look up in response, half already knowing what's going to come out of his mouth. And he goes, I was there that night when your friends got robbed and beat up. And ever since you've told me, I felt really bad about it. And I was like, I knew you was going to say that. I could tell by your reaction that day that something didn't sit right with you. Your reaction didn't sit right with me. We both talked about it and laughed it off and that was that. But what a coincidence. I ended up going to college with one of those guys from the cinema. I really appreciated the fact that he couldn't clean though and showed remorse. He really could have just said nothing. But I do think he knew I knew that day after the bar. What do you think? Also, this night took a very unusual turn. It could be a story time within itself. What are the odds, eh?